13 situations you're better off avoiding and leaving everything behind. Stoicism. Have you ever caught yourself stuck in situations that drain your energy and steal your peace of mind? You're not alone. Many of us have been there, trapped in cycles of toxic relationships, jobs, or habits that keep us spinning in place. Life doesn't come with a guidebook, but today, I'm going to give you one. 13 situations where you're better off walking away and leaving everything behind. In this video, we'll dive into how Stoic philosophy can help you recognize when it's time to step away, not as a form of defeat, but as a powerful decision to reclaim your inner calm and focus on what truly matters. You'll learn practical steps to apply in your life so you can find serenity amidst chaos and take control of your own path. If you find value in these insights, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated with more Stoic wisdom from Stoic in your life. Let's get started. 1. Abusive relationships. No one enters a relationship expecting it to become a battleground. In fact, relationships should be a safe haven, a source of peace and support, right? But sometimes, instead of finding that peace, you slowly realize that the person who should be lifting you up is actually pulling you down. Abusive relationships are rarely discussed over coffee with friends, but they exist, sometimes quietly, beneath the surface of even the most seemingly normal partnerships. Picture this. You're in a boat on a calm lake. At first, everything is tranquil, and the scenery is beautiful. But soon, cracks start forming at the bottom of the boat, and water begins seeping in. You could try patching the cracks with temporary fixes, but deep down you know the truth. The boat is sinking, and the best thing you can do is to get out before it pulls you under. That's what abusive relationships are like. No matter how many excuses you make or how hard you try to repair them, sometimes the only logical step is to walk away. Let's be honest. Abusive relationships don't only occur between romantic partners. They can exist in friendships, with family members, or even within professional relationships. Abuse isn't just physical violence or shouting. It can be emotional, psychological, or verbal. Sometimes, the most damaging words are the quietest ones, cutting deeper than any physical blow. But how do you know when it's time to leave? The first step is recognizing the signs. If you constantly feel belittled, manipulated, or fearful, these are glaring red flags you cannot ignore. It's like receiving small doses of poison every day. At first, you might not notice the damage, but over time, it destroys you from the inside out. No matter how subtle the abuse may seem, it chips away at your self-worth and mental well-being. It's natural to feel paralyzed by fear or doubt when thinking about leaving an abusive relationship. Emotional or financial dependence, or even the hope that the other person will change, can be powerful obstacles. But this is where Stoicism can guide you. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control and to let go of what we cannot. You cannot change another person, but you can change your situation. As Epictetus wisely said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. This quote is especially powerful in the context of abusive relationships, as it reminds us that our reactions and choices are within our control even if the circumstances are not. What can you do? First, confide in someone you trust. Sometimes you need an external perspective to see things clearly. Seek support, whether from friends, family, or professionals. You are not alone in this, and you don't have to face it alone. Making a plan is critical. Think of it like preparing for a hike. You research the trail, pack what you need, and ensure you have a map. Plan your exit from the relationship carefully, considering practical aspects like where you will live, how you will meet your basic needs, and who can support you through the process. Walking away from an abusive relationship is not about giving up. It's about reclaiming your life and your peace of mind. It's an act of self-love and respect. You are recognizing your worth and refusing to remain a victim any longer. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's essential to understand that leaving is a courageous act of taking control over your mind, your life, and your future. For many men, especially those aged 40 to 70, the idea of leaving a long-standing relationship may feel daunting or even shameful. There may be societal pressures to tough it out or to avoid being seen as weak, but true strength lies not in enduring endless suffering, but in knowing when enough is enough. Walking away from a toxic environment is an affirmation that you deserve better relationships, better respect, and better treatment. This process of recognizing the need to leave and then taking action is not easy, but it is necessary. The Stoics often remind us that life is too short to waste on things or people that bring us down. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Don't waste your time trapped in relationships that are poisoning your spirit and draining your energy. In modern life, these toxic relationships can take many forms, from a demanding boss who constantly undermines you to a close friend who manipulates you into feeling guilty for their problems. The key is to listen to your inner voice and recognize when something is no longer serving your well-being. Remember, the greatest act of courage isn't enduring abuse, it's walking away from it and reclaiming your life. If you find yourself in a relationship that feels like a sinking boat full of cracks, it's time to swim toward the shore. The solid, safe ground is waiting for you. Your happiness, peace, and mental well-being are worth more than any toxic relationship. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. So, take control of your freedom today. Leave behind what is dragging you down, and move forward into a life where you are valued, respected, and at peace with yourself. 2. Toxic environments. Toxic environments, places where negativity seems to linger in every corner, where gossip, resentment, and jealousy grow like weeds, are far too familiar to many of us. You may have experienced it. A workplace or social circle where you feel constantly on edge, as if someone is always plotting behind your back or waiting to trip you up. It's like walking into a jungle, not of trees and vines, but of whispered rumors and veiled sabotage. Working in such an environment is more than just physically exhausting. It's emotionally draining, like a slow, steady leak that saps your energy, leaving you feeling empty and defeated. The first step in dealing with a toxic environment is recognizing that you are in one. Sometimes we become so accustomed to negativity that we forget there's a brighter world outside the shadows we've been living in. Once you realize the toxicity surrounding you, it's crucial to assess your options. Can you move to another team, transfer to a different department, or even find another job entirely? If the answer is yes, then it's time to start taking action. Seek out a space where the air is lighter, where you can breathe without feeling weighed down by pessimism. After all, you deserve to work and live in an environment that nurtures, not depletes, your well-being. But what if leaving isn't an option right now? Perhaps you can't physically move away from the negativity, whether because of financial reasons, obligations, or simply not having a clear alternative yet. In such cases, the Stoic approach can offer a lifeline. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, taught us to focus on what is within our control and to let go of what isn't. You may not be able to change the people around you, but you have full control over how you react to them. In modern life, this translates into practicing detachment. If someone gossips about you or if a coworker constantly criticizes you, practice the art of emotional distance. As Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." You can choose not to let their words or actions affect your inner peace. By maintaining your composure and integrity, you protect your mental space from being polluted by the negativity around you. Another effective strategy is to create personal sanctuaries, small refuges of peace that can help you recharge during the day. It doesn't mean building literal walls around yourself, but finding moments of tranquility. Maybe it's a walk during lunch, a quiet break with a book, or even a brief call with a friend who isn't involved in the toxic environment. These small acts of self-care can make a tremendous difference in maintaining your energy and sanity. Think of it as tending to your mental garden, watering the seeds of positivity while weeding out the harmful thoughts and influences that try to take root. Still, if you find yourself in a situation where you must stay in that toxic environment for the foreseeable future, it's essential to cultivate your own positivity from within. Just because the space around you is filled with negativity doesn't mean you have to contribute to it. Instead, focus on being the person who plants kindness, support, and professionalism into the ground. You may not transform the entire environment, but at the very least you'll create a small corner where positive energy can thrive. As the Stoics remind us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Rather than letting the toxic atmosphere drag you down, stand firm in your values, and let your actions reflect the kind of environment you wish to see. Now let's take a moment to consider a modern-day example that might resonate. Imagine you're working in a corporate office, surrounded by coworkers who seem more interested in climbing over each other than lifting each other up. There's constant backstabbing, and every success is met with jealousy, not celebration. You've tried to avoid getting involved, but it feels like every day is another test of your patience and your ability to keep your head above water. You might even wonder if this is just how life is, if every workplace is this draining. But then you make a choice. You start focusing on what you can control, your own behavior. You stop engaging in office gossip. You choose to be kind even when others aren't. You create small moments of peace throughout your day, and slowly, you notice a shift. The negativity doesn't affect you as much. You're still in the same place physically, but mentally you've built a fortress of peace within yourself. This is the power of Stoicism in practice. In the end, toxic environments are like stormy seas. Sometimes the best option is to sail toward calmer waters, finding a safer, healthier place to be. But if you can't leave just yet, it's crucial to become a master of the waves, steering your ship with skill and calmness. Epictetus reminds us, in a world filled with storms, be your own beacon of light. That light is your attitude, your resilience, and your choice to focus on what you can control. Life is far too short to waste in environments that drain your joy and energy. Cultivate your inner strength, tend to your mental garden, and always remember that peace begins from within. By adopting this mindset, you can rise above any toxic environment, staying true to yourself and preserving your peace. The key takeaway here is that your well-being is in your hands. Whether you can physically escape a toxic situation or must endure it for now, the Stoic approach teaches you that your inner peace is non-negotiable. You can choose how to respond, how to protect yourself, and how to cultivate positivity despite the circumstances. Take control, be intentional with your actions, and never allow a toxic environment to define your life or your happiness. 3. Codependent relationships. In a relationship where it feels like you can't breathe without the other person, where every decision you make, every step you take, is somehow tied to them, that's what we call a codependent relationship, and it's much more common than we might like to admit. Maybe you've seen it in others, or maybe you've even been that person, the one who feels like they can't make a single move without checking with their partner first. On the surface, it might seem like a romantic movie, but in reality, it can turn into an emotional nightmare, where love blurs into dependency and personal freedom starts to slip away. When you're on a boat with a leak, and instead of finding a way to fix the hole, you and your partner spend all your time and energy bailing water out with buckets. You're both so focused on just keeping the boat afloat that you forget to patch the hole, or, worse yet, to build a stronger boat altogether. This is what happens in a codependent relationship. Rather than addressing the root issues or developing healthier ways to cope, both partners often fall deeper into a cycle of dependency, which ultimately stunts their personal growth and suffocates the relationship. You begin to lose touch with yourself, your individuality, and your sense of purpose because your happiness and well-being become entirely reliant on the other person. But what exactly is a codependent relationship? It's when your happiness, your sense of self, and your emotional stability are almost entirely wrapped up in another person. You're not just living your life, you're living for them, often at the expense of your own needs, desires, and personal growth. It might sound noble, like a grand act of love and self-sacrifice, but in truth it's a dangerous trap. It's a slow erosion of your identity, and worst of all, you often don't realize it until you're completely entangled. The Stoics believed in the power of emotional independence, in the idea that true happiness comes from within, not from external factors or other people. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "He who depends on himself will attain the greatest happiness." To apply this to a codependent relationship, the first step is recognizing that you're in one. This can be hard because it means admitting that something is wrong. But awareness is the first step toward recovery. You need to be honest with yourself about the unhealthy dynamics at play. Once you've accepted this, you can begin working on reclaiming your emotional independence. Start by rediscovering your interests, passions, and personal goals, things that exist outside of the relationship. The next crucial step is setting healthy boundaries. This can feel overwhelming, especially if you've spent years bending your boundaries to accommodate someone else, but it's essential. Learning to say no and protecting your personal space isn't selfish. It's a necessary part of taking care of yourself so that you can have healthier, more balanced relationships. The philosopher Epictetus reminds us, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." Boundaries are what allow you to master yourself, to define where you end and the other person begins. Another key part of breaking free from codependency is seeking support. Talk to friends, family, or a therapist. Sometimes getting an outside perspective can help you see the situation more clearly and give you the strength to make the changes you need. It's easy to feel alone when you're deep in a codependent relationship, but you're not. There are people who care about you and who can help you find your way back to yourself. And finally, understand that sometimes walking away is necessary. This can be the hardest part, especially if you've spent so much of your life intertwined with this person. It doesn't mean you don't love them, and it doesn't mean you're giving up. Instead, it means you love yourself enough to prioritize your own well-being and growth. As the Stoics teach, there are things within our control and things outside of it, and we must learn to let go of the things we cannot control. You can't control or change someone else, but you can choose to create space for your own happiness and personal growth. Sometimes that means putting distance between you and the relationship. Let me share a story that may resonate with you. Imagine a man in his mid-50s who has spent decades in a marriage where his every decision, emotion, and sense of self is dependent on his spouse. At first, it seemed romantic, the idea that they did everything together and relied so deeply on one another. But over time, he realized that he had lost himself. His hobbies had faded, his friendships had withered, and his personal goals were a distant memory. He was no longer living his life. He was living for his partner. One day, he found himself asking, "Who am I without this person?" It was then that he knew something had to change. With great difficulty, he started rediscovering what made him happy. He reconnected with old friends, started new hobbies, and began to set boundaries in his marriage. It wasn't easy, but as he rebuilt his emotional independence, he felt a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced in years. This is the journey out of codependency. Slowly, but surely, finding your way back to yourself. The Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." If your thoughts are entirely consumed by another person, it's time to take a step back and refocus on yourself. Happiness cannot come from another person, it must come from within. In conclusion, escaping a codependent relationship is not easy, but it is possible, and it's absolutely necessary for your well-being. It takes courage, self-reflection, and a commitment to your own happiness. Remember, the true essence of a healthy relationship is not dependence but interdependence. Two people standing strong on their own, choosing to share their lives without losing themselves in the process. As you embark on this journey, remember that true happiness isn't found in someone else. It's found within you. Letting go of what's unhealthy doesn't mean you're giving up. It means you're choosing yourself, and there is no greater act of love than that. Life is too short to spend it feeling trapped in a relationship that drains your energy and diminishes who you are. Choose growth. Choose happiness, and choose to breathe freely again. 4. Continuous disrespect. Sometimes in life, you encounter people who seem to have mastered the art of disrespect. They didn't learn this skill in school, yet they wield it with astonishing expertise, constantly crossing your boundaries, belittling you, and challenging your dignity. It's as if their goal is to undermine your sense of worth. Now let me tell you something. Being around people like this is like trying to hold a cactus with your bare hands. It hurts and leaves lasting scars. The teachings of Stoicism remind us to stay calm and focus on what we can control, but they also teach us the importance of removing ourselves from situations and people that harm us. There comes a point when you have to make a decision. There are clear signs that indicate it's time to distance yourself from someone. When a person consistently disrespects your boundaries, it's as if they're trampling over the invisible fence you've set up to protect your well-being. If they repeatedly ignore your requests and continue behaving disrespectfully, it's a clear signal that they don't value you. And let me be crystal clear. No one deserves to be treated that way. If you're nodding right now because this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many of us, especially men in our later years, have faced relationships where the constant disrespect feels like an everyday occurrence. But we often tolerate it out of habit, fear, or a sense of duty. Think of your life as a play. You're the director, and you have the power to choose who gets to perform alongside you. Now, would you allow an actor who consistently forgets their lines, causes chaos, and disrupts the entire production to stay in the cast? Probably not. Life works the same way. If someone in your life is constantly disrespecting you, it's your responsibility, as the director of your own life, to decide whether that person deserves a role in your story. Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, reminds us that we are disturbed not by events, but by the views we take of them. This means that the disrespect itself, though harmful, is not as damaging as the way we allow it to affect us if we continue to endure it. Walking away from disrespectful people is not an act of cruelty or insensitivity. It's an act of self-preservation and self-respect. You need to surround yourself with people who respect you and value your presence, not those who make you feel small or insignificant. This isn't about creating drama in every situation. It's about recognizing when a relationship has become toxic and taking the necessary steps to protect your peace of mind. To put this into practice, start by setting clear boundaries and communicating them assertively. Let the other person know what is and isn't acceptable. If they fail to respect these boundaries, you already have your answer. Here's where the courage to say goodbye comes into play. It's not easy, of course it isn't, but it's essential. In modern life, we're often tied to people out of social expectations, long histories, or even work situations. But Stoicism reminds us that our well-being is more important than these external obligations. Now imagine you're at work, and there's a colleague who constantly talks down to you, makes snide remarks, or undermines your efforts in front of others. You've tolerated it for months, maybe years, because you didn't want to cause conflict or appear confrontational. But every time this person disrespects you, it chips away at your confidence and mental peace. One day, after reflecting on what's within your control, you decide to have a respectful yet firm conversation with this colleague, setting clear boundaries about how you expect to be treated. If they continue with the same behavior, you escalate the issue to HR or consider your options for finding a new job. The key here is taking action instead of endlessly absorbing the disrespect. It's also important to lean on those who do respect you. These individuals become your safety net, reminding you that you deserve dignity. Surrounding yourself with people who appreciate you for who you are can help build the strength to distance yourself from those who don't. The Stoics often talk about the importance of community and supportive relationships. Seneca, for instance, said, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." The people in your life should uplift and encourage you, not tear you down. Ultimately, you deserve to live in an environment where you are respected. You're not asking for too much by expecting basic decency. You're asking for what is fair. If someone in your life can't understand that, then it's time for them to exit stage left. Sometimes distance is the greatest act of self-love. As uncomfortable as it may be, removing yourself from someone who continuously disrespects you is essential for maintaining your dignity and mental peace. Always remember, self-respect is the foundation upon which others will learn to respect you. In life is far too short to waste it on people who don't respect you. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what we can control and to step away from what harms us. Your well-being is the priority here, and if someone can't comprehend that, then it's time for them to go. As Seneca wisely said, "He who is brave is free." By distancing yourself from disrespectful people, you're not only protecting your peace, but you're also exercising your freedom to choose who gets to stay in your life. If you've made it this far, you're already taking the first step toward mastering your own life. Drop a comment saying, "I choose my peace," to show you're ready to leave behind what no longer serves you. Stay tuned, there's so much more wisdom ahead. 5. Incompatible goals. Have you ever felt like you're rowing a boat with someone, but while you're paddling toward the shore, the other person is steering you toward the open sea? It's a vivid metaphor, but it perfectly illustrates what happens when two people's goals in a relationship or a project are completely misaligned. In moments like these, it might be better to take different paths, not out of failure, but out of wisdom and self-respect. This isn't about being overly dramatic. It's simply a reminder that life offers opportunities for realignment, for steering your life toward a place that resonates with your true self. When you're in a relationship where your dream is to live a peaceful, simple life in the countryside, while your partner yearns for the hustle and bustle of the big city, one of you wants to write poetry under the shade of a tree, while the other dreams of creating electronic music in a skyscraper. Both dreams are valid, both beautiful in their own way, but clearly they are not compatible. It's not about whose dream is better. It's about the reality that trying to force harmony between such divergent visions often leads to frustration, resentment, and eventually, a more painful separation. And this isn't limited to personal relationships. It happens in professional settings too. Perhaps you're working on a project where your priority is innovation and creativity, but your colleagues are only interested in stability, sticking to the tried and true methods. It's like you're building a rocket while they're assembling tricycles. Both serve a purpose, but pretending they're interchangeable is a waste of time and energy. When you're faced with incompatible goals, this is where Stoic philosophy can guide you with profound wisdom. As Epictetus taught, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Accept that you can't change the other person's goals or vision, but you can change your approach and your decisions. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to align these opposing paths, maybe it's time to take separate journeys and find companions who share your destination. It's not about giving up. It's about being honest with yourself and others. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is not to resist, but to recognize when it's time to let go. If deep down, you know your goals and the other person's are headed in opposite directions, it's a clear sign that it's time to move on and find a path that aligns with your core values and dreams. The Stoics believed that inner peace comes from aligning your actions with your values. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the art of living is more like wrestling than dancing. It's about knowing which battles are worth fighting and which are worth walking away from. If you're constantly battling incompatible goals, it's like trying to fuse two completely different elements, leading to endless conflict and frustration. Let me bring this idea into a modern-day scenario. Picture yourself working for a company where you're passionate about shaking things up, pushing boundaries and exploring new frontiers. But your team is resistant to change. They're happy doing things the way they've always been done. Every meeting feels like a tug of war, with you proposing bold ideas and them pulling back, preferring to stay in their comfort zone. At some point, you might find yourself asking, is this really worth the struggle? Am I wasting my energy fighting for something that just isn't going to happen? This is the moment where you need to step back and reevaluate. The Stoics would advise you to focus on what's within your control, your actions, your attitude, your choices. It might be time to seek out a new project, a new team, or even a new job where your goals are more aligned with the people around you. Of course, this doesn't mean you should run away at the first sign of disagreement. Differences can be enriching. And some of the best ideas come from constructive conflict. But when the differences are fundamental and ongoing, when it feels like you're stuck in an endless battle, it's a sign that you're fighting a losing battle. And as Marcus Aurelius wisely said, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. If your thoughts are consumed by frustration because of incompatible goals, it's time to change course. This is not an act of failure. It's an act of wisdom. It's about choosing to spend your life working toward something that resonates deeply with you, not something that constantly pushes you into conflict and dissatisfaction. Recognizing incompatible goals is not about giving up, it's about being true to yourself. When you're faced with such a situation, remember the wisdom of the Stoics. Focus on what you can control and accept what you cannot. Life is too short to spend rowing in opposite directions. Find a path and companions that allow you to move forward with purpose, clarity, and peace of mind. The Stoic approach teaches us that our well-being comes from aligning ourselves with the things we value most. So, if you're feeling pulled in different directions, it might be time to let go and seek a route that truly leads you where you want to be. 6. Manipulation and control. Let's begin by truly understanding what's going on here. Imagine yourself as a ship sailing through the vast ocean of life. You've set your course, your dreams, and your goals. But then, someone steps aboard your ship and starts barking orders, steering you away from your intended destination. At first, you may think they're helping you, guiding you because they care. But soon, you realize they're not helping at all. They're controlling you. You lose sight of your own compass, and before long, you're not even sailing toward your own dreams anymore. Instead, you're drifting in a direction you never intended to go. This is the essence of manipulation. It could be a friend who guilts you into doing what they want, a partner who isolates you from your loved ones, or a boss who micromanages every aspect of your work. The impact is the same. It erodes your emotional strength, your confidence, and your sense of autonomy. Now, this is where Stoic philosophy becomes an invaluable tool to help you navigate through these rough waters. The Stoics teach us to focus on what we can control and accept what we cannot. You cannot control how others behave, but you can control your reactions to their attempts at manipulation. When someone tries to dictate your life, recognize that their actions are beyond your control, but your response to them is entirely within your power. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your choices, and you certainly don't need to seek approval for living life on your own terms. Learning this distinction between what you can and cannot control is the first step toward reclaiming your freedom. One of the most powerful tools in your arsenal is emotional detachment. By practicing this, you can view the situation with clarity, rather than through the fog of guilt or obligation. Learning to say no is essential, even though it might feel uncomfortable at first. Saying no isn't selfish, nor is it a rejection of others. It's an affirmation of your own boundaries and your right to prioritize your well-being. As Epictetus wisely said, no person is free who is not master of themselves. This means that true freedom comes from being in control of your own mind, emotions, and decisions. No one should have the power to rob you of that freedom. Consider your life as a garden. You decide what to plant, what to nurture, and what to remove. But if you allow others to take over, they might fill it with weeds, choking the beauty of the plants you've worked so hard to grow. Allowing someone else to control your decisions is like giving them the right to fill your garden with things that don't belong. Soon your life becomes cluttered with their wants, needs, and expectations while your own desires are buried beneath the chaos. This is why it's crucial to take back the reins. You need to become the gardener of your own life again, uprooting what doesn't serve you and making space for what truly matters. In modern life, manipulation can come from various sources. It could be that friend who always seems to need something from you, making you feel guilty if you don't comply with their requests. Or maybe it's a family member who tries to control your career choices or personal relationships. Manipulation can even happen in professional environments with a boss who watches over your every move, stripping you of your autonomy. The challenge lies in recognizing these behaviors early on and setting firm boundaries before they take deeper root. It starts with self-awareness. You need to understand when and where your autonomy is being compromised. Once you see the manipulation for what it is, you can establish clear limits. Communicate assertively, but respectfully, that you will not tolerate anyone steering your life in a direction you haven't chosen. And be prepared to walk away from those who don't respect your boundaries. The Stoics remind us that walking away isn't a sign of weakness, but of strength and wisdom. As Seneca once said, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Don't waste your precious time on people who drain your energy and manipulate your choices. Let me tell you a story to bring this to life. Imagine a man in his 50s who has always been the rock of his family. For years, he's bent over backward to meet everyone's needs, his partner, his children, even his colleagues. At first, he thought he was doing the right thing, fulfilling his role as a provider and supporter. But slowly, he started noticing that every decision he made wasn't really his own anymore. His partner would guilt him into making choices that benefited them, not him. His children would pressure him to take on more responsibilities than he could handle. Even at work, his boss seemed to micromanage every project, leaving no room for him to express his own creativity. One day, he realized that he was no longer living for himself, but for everyone else around him. This was his wake-up call. He decided to take back control of his life, setting firm boundaries at work, communicating openly with his family, and most importantly, learning to say no when it was necessary. In doing so, he rediscovered his sense of freedom and autonomy. Now I ask you, are you allowing others to take control of your ship? Are you letting people plant weeds in the garden of your life? Or are you ready to set your own course and tend to the things that truly matter to you? These are the kinds of questions that require deep reflection, and they're crucial for anyone who feels manipulated or controlled. Life is too short to spend it living by someone else's rules. You deserve the freedom to make your own choices, to chart your own path. Distancing yourself from those who seek to control every aspect of your life is essential for your emotional and mental well-being. Stoicism provides a guiding light in this process, helping you stay focused on what matters most, your autonomy and inner peace. Always remember to set boundaries, say no when necessary, and surround yourself with people who respect your freedom. As the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So are you going to keep letting others dictate your life, or will you take the helm and steer your ship where you truly want to go? The choice, as always, is yours. 7. Illegal or immoral situations. Life has a way of testing our principles, often putting us in difficult positions that force us to question our values. But what happens when these situations cross the line of what is legal or morally acceptable? It's in these moments that Stoic philosophy can offer invaluable guidance. Imagine being in a company where the practices are questionable at best. You've noticed that some actions seem to be skirting the edge of legality, and while others might assure you that everyone's doing it, or that it's just a small slip, you can't ignore that uncomfortable knot in your stomach telling you that something is deeply wrong. This is where manipulation and control often come into play. Those around you might try to convince you that you're overreacting, that your strong sense of morality is actually an obstacle to success. They might use subtle tactics to make you feel guilty for wanting to do the right thing, pressuring you into compromising your values. But here's the real question. Is it worth sacrificing your integrity for temporary peace of mind or material gain? The Stoics would argue otherwise. The teachings of Stoicism emphasize the value of personal integrity above all else, reminding us that external approval is fleeting, while the weight of a compromised conscience lasts much longer. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, the best way to defend yourself is not to become like those who are doing wrong. This means that even when surrounded by unethical behavior, the greatest strength lies in staying true to your own principles. If you find yourself involved in illegal or immoral situations, stepping away may be the only way to preserve your integrity and security. This isn't an act of weakness. It's a demonstration of strength and wisdom. So what should you do when faced with these situations? First and foremost, you need to acknowledge the problem. Denial only prolongs the discomfort, the guilt, and the emotional turmoil. Don't fool yourself into thinking it's something that will pass without your intervention. Talk to someone you trust, whether it's a friend, family member, or professional. If necessary, seek legal advice to understand the risks and the best way to extricate yourself from the situation. Isolation is the breeding ground for manipulation, and by reaching out, you gain clarity and the support you need to take the next step. Next, evaluate your options. While leaving may not be easy or immediate, planning your exit can provide you with the mental and emotional strength needed to follow through. Having a strategy in place can give you the courage to take action, knowing that you've considered the consequences and prepared yourself for the path ahead. Remember, Stoicism teaches us that action is the antidote to fear and control. By staying passive and overthinking the situation, you only give more power to those trying to manipulate you. But by acting, even in small steps, you begin to reclaim your autonomy. Let's take a moment to bring this idea closer to modern life. Picture yourself working in a company where you start noticing that certain decisions are being made behind closed doors, ones that don't quite sit right with you. Perhaps they involve cutting corners in ways that could hurt the customers, employees, or the environment. At first, you rationalize it. Everyone around you seems fine with it, and you don't want to rock the boat. But slowly, it starts eating away at you. The weight of these choices becomes heavier, and you start losing sleep over it. Deep down, you know that continuing down this road is not only a risk to your career, but a betrayal of your core values. The Stoic answer is clear. Integrity is worth far more than temporary gains or the comfort of fitting in. As Seneca once said, "The greatest wealth is a contented mind." No amount of money or external validation can replace the inner peace that comes from living in alignment with your values. Once you've identified the problem, gathered support, and evaluated your options, the next step is to act. Don't linger in the contemplation phase for too long. Action is the key to breaking free from manipulation and control, whether that means resigning from a job, ending a business relationship, or distancing yourself from people who encourage unethical behavior. Taking that step will restore your sense of agency. You may wonder, what about the consequences? Yes, leaving an immoral or illegal situation might bring short-term discomfort, financial strain, loss of status, or difficult conversations with people who don't understand your choice. But consider the alternative: the long-term weight of regret, the constant internal battle of knowing you compromised your values. In the end, your self-respect and integrity are worth far more than any external reward. And when you live with integrity, you earn something priceless: the ability to look at yourself in the mirror without shame, knowing you stayed true to who you are. At this point, let's reflect on the broader Stoic lesson: the value of aligning our actions with our principles. Your worth is not measured by the title you hold or the money you make. It is measured by your ability to remain true to yourself, even when the world around you seems to be crumbling. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In other words, don't just talk about integrity, live it, especially when it's hard. Facing illegal or immoral situations challenges your character in ways that few other experiences can. Don't allow manipulation or fear to steer you away from your values. Walking away from these situations might be painful in the short term, but it's a long-term victory for your integrity and well-being. As Seneca said, integrity does not need rules. It knows when it is time to leave. Hold on to this wisdom as your guiding light. Sometimes the best fight is the one you choose not to engage in. 8. Personal stagnation. Have you ever felt like you're stuck in one place, as if you're on a treadmill moving but never getting anywhere? That feeling of personal stagnation, when a situation or relationship seems to hold back your growth, is more common than you might think. But here's the good news. There's a way out, and this could be the sign you've been waiting for to make a change. Personal stagnation often feels like a weight on your shoulders, a barrier between where you are now and where you know you could be. But recognizing that you're stuck is the first step toward freedom. Let's reflect for a moment. Think of yourself as a tree. Trees need space, sunlight, and nutrients to grow. If a tree stays in a small pot for too long, its roots become tangled, preventing it from flourishing. Similarly, you need space to grow, physically, emotionally, and mentally. If you find yourself in a situation that restricts you, it's like you're that tree stuck in a pot too small for your roots to spread. Your growth becomes stunted, and over time, that sense of confinement can weigh heavily on your mind, leaving you feeling unfulfilled. Personal stagnation shows up in many areas of life, in your job, your relationships, or even in the routines you follow every day. Maybe you feel like you're no longer learning anything new at work, or your relationships are no longer challenging or inspiring you. Perhaps your daily routine has become monotonous, and you find yourself going through the motions without passion or purpose. These are signs that it might be time for a change. But how do you know for sure? This is where Stoicism offers us a guiding hand. The Stoics believed that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we have full control over how we respond to those events. So, if a situation or relationship isn't helping you evolve, it's time to take a closer look and consider your options. So, how do you move forward? Start by identifying exactly what's making you feel stuck. Write it down. Sometimes, seeing your thoughts in front of you helps clarify the situation. From there, set clear and achievable goals for personal growth. For example, if your job isn't offering new learning opportunities, seek additional training, whether through courses, workshops, or even exploring a new career. If a relationship feels limiting, have an honest conversation with the other person about your needs and expectations. Growth often starts with uncomfortable but necessary conversations. Consider too the power of small changes. You don't always need to make radical shifts to see improvement. Sometimes adjusting your daily routine, picking up a new hobby, or dedicating time to learning something new can have a profound effect on how you feel. Small steps can lead to big transformations over time. And finally, surround yourself with people who inspire and support you. The influence of a positive environment is immense. As the old saying goes, you are the company you keep. Make sure that those around you encourage your growth rather than keep you rooted in place. Personal stagnation isn't a dead end. It's a signal that something needs to change. Don't see it as a roadblock, but rather as an opportunity to reinvent yourself. Remember, you have the power to control how you respond to any situation, and that's where your true strength lies. As the saying goes, true growth happens when you dare to step out of the pot that confines you. So, what are you waiting for? It's time to break free from those tangled roots and find the space you need to thrive. Take that next step forward and grow into the fullest version of yourself. 9. The loss of identity. Have you ever paused and asked yourself if you're truly living your life, or if somehow you've become a supporting character in someone else's story? In the chaos of everyday life, relationships, work, and obligations, it's all too easy to lose touch with who we are. Slowly, without even realizing it, we drift away from our authentic selves, and that, my friend, is a silent tragedy. Losing your sense of identity doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, subtle, and sometimes you only notice it when the emptiness becomes impossible to ignore. Personal identity can slip away quietly. One day you realize that the things you used to love, like your morning coffee, reading books, that once fueled your passion or laughing freely, aren't part of your life anymore. Why? Because you've been too busy trying to fit into someone else's expectations. You've become so focused on meeting the needs of others, whether it's in a romantic relationship, friendship, or your job, that you've lost touch with yourself. This is a common struggle for men, especially those balancing the pressures of work, family, and social circles. It's not uncommon to realize one day that the person staring back at you in the mirror feels like a stranger. The teachings of Stoicism offer a powerful antidote to this problem. The Stoics emphasize the importance of standing firm in your values and not letting external circumstances dictate who you are. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This is a reminder that our true selves should not be defined by the expectations of others. Instead, take a step back and reflect on what truly matters to you. What makes you, you. Let's look at a common situation, a romantic relationship. In the beginning, everything is exciting, and it's natural to want to share experiences and even adapt to each other. But what happens when adaptation turns into losing yourself? You start watching movies you don't enjoy, listening to music you don't connect with, or even dressing in a way that feels unnatural to you. Slowly, you stop recognizing the person you've become. You've compromised your identity in the name of being loved or accepted. The solution isn't easy, but it's crucial. You need to reevaluate your situation. It's about more than just assessing relationships. It's about examining every aspect of your life. Does your job support your growth, or are you just fulfilling someone else's vision? Do your friendships uplift you, or are they forcing you into roles that don't feel right? Are you living in alignment with your values, or are you drifting along on autopilot? Reconnecting with your identity requires honesty, and sometimes it's uncomfortable to face the reality of how far you've strayed from your true self. But this discomfort is the beginning of your path back to authenticity. One of the first steps you can take is to reintroduce yourself to the things you love. Start with small actions, activities that bring you joy, even if you have to do them alone. If you used to enjoy painting, take it up again. If hiking used to clear your mind, put on your boots and hit the trail. By doing these small things, you start reconnecting with who you are. Surround yourself with people who appreciate you for your authentic self, not those who try to mold you to fit their needs or expectations. True friends and partners will encourage you to be yourself and will never demand that you change who you are to suit them. Think of this process like uncovering a treasure that's been buried for years. Over time, layers of external demands, social expectations, professional responsibilities, relationship pressures, have buried your true self. But the treasure is still there, waiting to be rediscovered. Slowly, as you peel back these layers, you begin to reconnect with the person you were, always meant to be. It's a gradual process, but each step you take brings you closer to living a life that feels true and fulfilling. At the heart of this journey is the realization that losing your identity is not the end, but a signal that it's time to rediscover and reclaim yourself. It's about learning that you don't have to conform to the expectations of others to live a meaningful life. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." Once you have a clear sense of who you are, you'll stop looking for validation from outside sources, and you'll start living in a way that feels deeply aligned with your true nature. So, where does this leave you? It leaves you with a challenge and an opportunity. Reclaiming your identity takes courage, but there's no greater act of bravery than choosing to be yourself in a world that constantly tries to mold you into something else. Finding yourself again is not about making radical changes overnight, but about slowly peeling back the layers that have been placed on you. Your identity is the foundation upon which your entire life is built. Don't let anyone else take control of that foundation. Rediscover what makes you unique, and have the strength to live according to that truth, even when it's difficult. As Marcus Aurelius wisely said, "In the moment you stop conforming to the expectations of others, you begin to live." So, will you start living authentically, or continue being a shadow in someone else's story? The choice, as always, is yours. 10. Expectativas irrealistas. When someone constantly demands that you meet impossible or unrealistic expectations, it can feel like being thrown into the ocean and told to swim with no prior experience. These types of expectations create a constant source of stress, often leading to one crucial but freeing decision. It may be time to step back or even walk away. Expectations, in many ways, are like those distorted mirrors you find in fun houses at amusement parks. They reflect back a version of ourselves that's often exaggerated or twisted, showing either an inflated sense of what we can achieve or an unattainable standard we can never live up to. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what's within our control and to let go of what isn't. So when someone places unreasonable demands on you, it's important to pause and ask yourself, is this within my control? If not, then it's time to reevaluate how much energy you're willing to invest in meeting expectations that don't align with reality. Imagine you have a boss who expects you to work 60 hours a week without a break, while still maintaining a flawless balance between your personal and professional life. It's an impossible task. These kinds of expectations aren't just unrealistic. They drain you over time, both mentally and physically, leaving you depleted and unmotivated. It's like trying to fill a bottomless well. No matter how much effort you pour into it, the well will never be full, and you'll be left feeling like you're constantly falling short. So how do you handle situations where the expectations placed on you are too high? The first step is to recognize that these demands are not reasonable. Accepting this truth is empowering because it removes the burden of believing you are somehow failing. Next, communicate your boundaries in a clear and respectful manner. Setting limits doesn't always mean cutting ties or walking away entirely. Often, it's about redefining the terms of your relationship with that person. You don't have to sever connections abruptly. Instead, find ways to adjust those expectations to a more manageable level, just as you would turn down the volume at a noisy party, finding a quieter corner where you can be comfortable. A helpful strategy in dealing with unrealistic expectations is to adopt a Stoic mindset. Focus on what truly matters to you and what you can control. Instead of exhausting yourself trying to please everyone around you, return to your core values and goals. If someone expects perfection from you, remind yourself that perfection is an illusion. The Stoics understood this well. It's not about being perfect, but about giving your best effort. What's important is your dedication and persistence, not the impossible pursuit of some idealized version of yourself. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, famously said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." This means your worth isn't determined by meeting unrealistic standards, but by staying true to what's within your power, your efforts, your actions, and your responses. Let's consider another real-world example. Think of a father in his late 40s who, after years of juggling a demanding job and raising a family, starts feeling the pressure to be the perfect provider. Society may expect him to always have the answers, maintain peak performance at work, and still be the ideal father and husband. But the truth is, no one can meet all of those expectations flawlessly, and the pressure of trying to do so can take a heavy toll. He may feel like he's constantly falling short at home or at work, despite his best efforts. The key lesson for him, and for anyone in this situation, is to recognize that his value isn't tied to being perfect. Instead, it lies in being present and doing his best in each area of his life, without the impossible weight of perfection hanging over him. You approach the challenge of dealing with expectations that are dragging you down. First, recognize that these are not your burdens to carry alone. Take a moment to reflect on whether these expectations align with your personal values and capacities. Then, communicate your boundaries in a way that's firm but kind. You're not being selfish when you say no to things that aren't realistic. You're protecting your mental and emotional well-being, which in turn allows you to be your best self in all areas of your life. Remember, the people who truly care about you will respect your boundaries and understand that you're human, not a machine built to meet endless demands. Living under the weight of unrealistic expectations is like trying to keep up with a race that has no finish line. It's exhausting and unsustainable. The Stoics remind us that serenity and peace of mind come from focusing on what is within our control and letting go of the rest. If someone's expectations are causing you more harm than good, it's time to consider distancing yourself, whether physically or emotionally, from those pressures. Redefine the relationships in your life that demand too much, and prioritize those that respect your limits and allow you to thrive as your authentic self. Don't let the expectations of others dictate your life. Recognize when those expectations are unrealistic and take the necessary steps to protect your mental health and emotional well-being. Sometimes you'll need to physically distance yourself, but often, it's simply about adjusting the terms of your interactions with people. 11. The lack of reciprocity. Have you ever found yourself pouring all your energy, love, and time into a relationship, whether it's with a partner, friend, or even a family member, and felt like you're not getting even half of that back? It's a draining experience, almost like you've turned into an emotional well where you give and give, but somehow, that well never gets refilled. You find yourself feeling exhausted, even resentful, and you begin to question whether it's worth continuing to invest so much into something that seems to offer so little in return. Lack of reciprocity is a topic that often flies under the radar, but it's something many of us struggle with. You might be the most generous person in the world, always willing to give your time, attention, and energy to those you care about, but everyone has a limit. Think of yourself as an emotional bank. If you keep making withdrawals to give to others, but no one ever deposits anything back into your account, eventually you'll be bankrupt, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. This is a place where many people end up when they give too much without receiving enough in return. And when your emotional balance is in the red, who will you turn to for support? It's a scenario we've all experienced at one time or another, but admitting it is often the hardest part. We convince ourselves that we're being good friends, good partners, or good family members by continuing to give, believing that giving without expecting anything back is virtuous. After all, isn't that what we've been taught? But the truth is, even the Stoics, known for their wisdom on accepting life's challenges, understood that reciprocity is a crucial part of a balanced life. It's not about being selfish. It's about recognizing your own value and understanding that you deserve to receive just as much as you give. When you find yourself in an unbalanced relationship where reciprocity seems to be missing, the first step is acknowledging the problem. It's not easy to admit that someone you care about isn't meeting you halfway, but it's essential if you want things to improve. Be honest with yourself and with the other person. Sometimes they might not even realize that they're not giving enough in return. A sincere, open conversation can often be the key to greater understanding and a healthier, more balanced relationship. But communication doesn't always fix things. And if you've spoken up and nothing changes, it might be time to reconsider that relationship's place in your life. This doesn't necessarily mean you need to cut ties completely, but you do need to ask yourself how much more you're willing to give without receiving. Protecting your emotional well-being is not a weakness. It's essential for your health and happiness. We are often conditioned to think that giving is always noble, but giving to the point of depletion serves no one, not you and not the people you're trying to help. Remember, as the Stoics teach us, we must maintain a balance in life, focusing on what's within our control and letting go of what's beyond it. If someone consistently fails to reciprocate your efforts, that imbalance is something you can control by either adjusting your expectations or stepping back. One strategy for dealing with a lack of reciprocity is to broaden your network of emotional support. Don't put all your emotional eggs in one basket. Having multiple sources of support, whether through other friendships, family members, or even professional communities, can help you feel less drained when one relationship isn't as reciprocal as it should be. This doesn't mean you're replacing people in your life, but rather ensuring that you have a strong, diverse support system so you're not solely dependent on one person to meet all your emotional needs. Another key approach is to prioritize self-care. This isn't about becoming closed off or less generous. It's about recognizing that you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're constantly giving without taking time to replenish your own energy, you'll eventually burn out. Spend time doing things that recharge you, whether that's exercising, engaging in hobbies, or simply taking time for quiet reflection. The better you care for yourself, the more energy you'll have to give to others, and the more clarity you'll have about which relationships are worth investing in. Reciprocity isn't about keeping score or making sure everything is perfectly balanced all the time. It's about a natural flow of giving and receiving that sustains both people in the relationship. As the quote goes, Reciprocity is not a transaction, it's a dance. When both partners are dancing, the relationship flows effortlessly. But when you're dancing alone, it's time to pause and reconsider whether the dance is worth continuing. In the end, living a life where you constantly give without receiving leads to resentment and fatigue. It's not just about others respecting you, it's about you respecting yourself enough to walk away from relationships that drain you. As Epictetus once said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. In the context of relationships, this means focusing on quality over quantity, investing your time and energy in people who genuinely value and reciprocate your efforts. 12. Repetition of negative cycles. Have you ever felt like you're trapped in a never-ending loop, like you're stuck on an old, rusty carousel that never stops spinning? Every time you think things might change, you find yourself making the same mistakes, facing the same problems, and, unsurprisingly, getting the same disappointing results. It's almost like being stuck in a bad movie that you can't turn off. This feeling of being caught in negative cycles can be exhausting, making you wonder if you're destined to live in an eternal déjà vu of setbacks and frustrations. But here's the good news. You're not doomed to repeat the same patterns forever. These negative cycles aren't some kind of divine punishment or unavoidable karma. Often the solution is as simple as stepping away from the situation that's trapping you. Yes, it can be that straightforward, like changing the channel when you're bored with what's on TV. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to change your environment, your mindset, or even the people around you. If a plant isn't growing in its current spot, what do? You don't blame the plant. You move it to better soil, give it more sunlight, and provide the right conditions for it to thrive. Well, you're that plant. If you stay planted in the same barren ground, whether it's a toxic relationship, an unfulfilling job, or unhealthy habits, you won't grow. Moving to a healthier space mentally and physically is key to breaking free from those cycles that keep you stuck. Breaking these negative patterns requires making tough, but necessary decisions. Maybe it's time to leave that job that drains your energy but offers no real future. Maybe it's time to distance yourself from people who only bring you down, or to stop habits you know are holding you back. These choices aren't easy, but they are essential if you want to break free from the loop you're caught in. Here's where Stoicism comes in, a philosophy that teaches us to focus on what we can control and to let go of what we can't. The Stoics remind us that while we can't always change what happens to us, we can always change how we respond to those things. It's in this mindset where real freedom lies. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply walking away. This isn't about running from your problems or avoiding responsibility. It's about self-preservation and choosing peace over chaos. It's about taking control of your well-being and choosing to prioritize your health and happiness over toxic situations that keep repeating themselves. A practical strategy for breaking these cycles is to think of your life like a book. Every chapter represents a stage or cycle in your life. Some chapters are exciting, full of growth and achievement. Others are monotonous, filled with frustration or pain. But here's the thing. You are the author of your own story. If a chapter is unbearable, you have the power to turn the page. You don't have to keep writing the same story over and over again. You can start a new chapter, filled with fresh opportunities, new experiences, and a renewed sense of purpose. Of course, I know this all sounds easier said than done. Making a change, especially when you're deep in a negative cycle, can be terrifying. The unknown is always scary, and often we find ourselves clinging to the familiar, even when the familiar is making us miserable. But remember, change doesn't guarantee immediate success, but it does offer the possibility of something better. Staying in a cycle that harms you, however, guarantees only more of the same. Let's say you've been stuck in a repetitive cycle at work. You've been in the same role for years, and despite all your efforts, nothing ever changes. Your boss keeps making the same unrealistic demands. You're constantly overworked, and no matter how hard you push yourself, you never seem to get the recognition or reward you deserve. It's a frustrating, disheartening loop that's draining your energy. Every day feels like a repeat of the one before. and you're starting to lose hope that things will ever get better. At this point, the question you need to ask yourself is this: am I willing to keep living this way? If the answer is no, it's time to take action, whether that means having a conversation with your boss, seeking new opportunities, or even considering a complete career change. 13. Threat to mental health. In the world we live in, we are constantly bombarded with demands, expectations, and pressures that seem endless. Amid all this chaos, your mental health often takes a back seat. But there comes a time when you have to stop and reflect seriously on how you're managing your inner world. If you don't, the weight of stress, anxiety, and depression can slowly take over, pushing your well-being to the edge. Think of your mind as a garden. Every thought is a seed, and while some seeds grow into beautiful flowers that nurture your spirit, others become weeds that suffocate your peace. Chronic stress, unaddressed anxiety, and lingering depression are like those weeds, creeping in and taking over the fertile soil of your mind. And if left unchecked, these weeds can choke out the life and joy from your mental garden. This is where Stoicism offers us practical wisdom. The Stoics believed in focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we cannot. However, when it comes to protecting our mental health, sometimes drastic action is required. You may have heard of the analogy of the boiled frog. If you drop a frog into boiling water, it will immediately jump out. But if you place it in cold water and slowly heat it up, the frog won't notice the danger until it's too late. This is often how chronic stress and anxiety work. We slowly adapt to unhealthy levels of stress without realizing the damage being done, until we reach a breaking point. Our modern lives have a way of turning up the heat without us noticing, until suddenly we're overwhelmed and on the brink of burnout. This is where Stoic courage comes into play. It takes bravery to identify, and if necessary, walk away from the situations, habits, or relationships that are harming your mental health. This could be a toxic work environment, a draining relationship, or even a self-destructive habit that you've held on to for far too long. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." You cannot afford to let negative cycles drag you down indefinitely. Here's a way to visualize it. Imagine you're carrying a backpack filled with stones. Each stone represents a stress, a worry, or a burden that weighs you down. Over time, you've grown so accustomed to carrying this load that you've forgotten what it feels like to be light and free. But just because you're used to the weight doesn't mean you need to keep carrying it. Why not start removing the stones one by one? You don't have to dump them all at once. Begin with the smaller ones. Maybe that means reducing unnecessary commitments, dedicating more time to things you enjoy, or seeking professional help if needed. As you begin to lighten your load, you'll notice the difference. The weight becomes more manageable, and eventually, you'll feel lighter. However, let's be clear. This isn't magic. It's going to take effort, intentionality, and sometimes difficult decisions. Removing the negative influences on your mental health doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, but one that's well worth it when you think about the peace and relief that come with a clear, healthy mind. Just imagine what it would feel like to walk through life without that constant fog of worry or dread. When you're able to tend to the garden of your mind, pulling out those weeds, the flowers, the thoughts and experiences that truly nourish you, can finally thrive. The threat to your mental health is very real, and it needs to be addressed with the seriousness it deserves. Too many people resign themselves to a life weighed down by stress and emotional turmoil, believing it's just part of life. But it doesn't have to be that way. The Stoic philosophy reminds us of the importance of resilience and self-care. It encourages us to face life's challenges with strength, but also to make the necessary changes to preserve our inner peace. As Seneca wisely said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Often the worst part of any struggle is the fear of addressing it. Once you begin to make changes, you'll realize that many of the fears that held you back were overblown. Modern life can be particularly ruthless on mental health. Men in their 40s to 70s often face a unique set of challenges, balancing career pressures, family responsibilities, and the societal expectation to hold it all together. It's easy to lose sight of your own needs in the middle of that storm. Take a lesson from the boiled frog story. Don't wait until it's too late to make changes. If you've been enduring chronic stress, anxiety, or depression for a long time, it's time to start addressing it. This might mean seeking professional help, like therapy or counseling, which isn't a sign of weakness, but an act of strength and wisdom. Or it could mean reevaluating your workload, cutting back on toxic relationships, or simply making more time for activities that bring you joy. Remember, self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. As we wrap up, think about this. Your mind is like a garden. If you want it to flourish, you need to tend to it carefully, planting seeds of positivity and pulling out the weeds of stress and anxiety. It's up to you to decide what stays and what goes. In conclusion, the battle for your mental health is one worth fighting. Don't let chronic stress, anxiety, or depression become permanent fixtures in your life. Use the wisdom of Stoicism to guide you in taking control of what you can and letting go of what you can't. As Epictetus said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them. So today, choose to respond by taking care of your mental health. Your future self will thank you for it. As we come to the end of this video, I want to remind you that sometimes knowing when to walk away is the greatest victory. Applying these Stoic principles to your daily life can lead to personal growth and a deeper sense of peace. If you found value in today's lesson, leave a comment below sharing which situation resonated with you the most. Don't forget to subscribe to Stoic in Your Life and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Your journey doesn't stop here. Check out the recommended videos and continue building the life you deserve. Thank you for your time and support, and I'll see you in the next adventure.